Good morning, everyone. My name is Tina Lee. Today we're having a special guest, Michael Gates. Michael works as a professor at Oxford Business School. He's also the managing director of Michael Gates CrossCulture. Michael is not just remarkable because he's high profile as an interculturalist. He's indeed a generous, a kind person who's willing to help those who are in need. Good morning, Michael.
Morning, really nice to see you again, Tina. How are you today?
I'm doing all right, thank you. A warm welcome. So let's start with your early life. You were born in the UK and now live in Finland. So what experiences in your early experiences steered you into interculture field?
Well, I'm only part English. So my mother was Austrian.
Oh.
My father was British, and my mother's parents were ethnically Czech from what was then, well, in fact, when they were born, it was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. So they were Austrian nationality, but Czech ethnic. So we always had a mix of cultures at home. And I think that was probably one of the first reasons why I moved into this field. And in fact, if I think about my very first cultural experience, or what I'd call a culture shock in a way, it was when my mother first sent me to school in the UK. Mm-hmm. And she sent me on my first day at school wearing Austrian lederhosen. And you can imagine I felt a little bit different from the other kids. And so I think I had an early consciousness of cultural difference.
So do you still have this lederhosen with you now?
No, they've gone a long time ago. Right. I wouldn't wear them these days, I tell you.
No. So I think many people may wonder what interculturalists do. And could you give us or share some insights with us, the necessity to become interculture competent?
Well, I think it depends on what your purpose is. And the purpose for most of the people that I'm working with is that they work in business and they either like to be able to work more effectively with their colleagues from different cultures, or they have customers or suppliers who are from other countries, and they'd like to be able to have a more successful approach to them. And so that's the reason really that most of the people that I work with have it. Of course, there are many other reasons, people going to study abroad or people who have a general interest, but my clients are either from business or government usually.
Right, so it's really about being able to communicate with people from different culture background effectively, right?
Yeah, and communication, of course, to my view, is the most important thing, but it includes the things that you do when you're communicating. So working with different people, trying to sell to people who have different values and ways of operating than you have, and leading teams. All those things, negotiating, that's a really big thing for me, because I teach cross-cultural negotiation as one of the key areas that I work in.
Yes, indeed, it's something I also would like to ask you later on. I know that you are very passionate about your profession. And then what do you enjoy most?
Well, I used to really enjoy traveling and meeting people. Okay. But of course, that's been difficult for the last year or more. Yeah. Though I still meet people daily, like yourself today, over things like Zoom or Teams.
That's right. Yeah.
And I suppose the thing that gives me most satisfaction, if someone comes back and says, we got a much better deal than we've had with this organization before, because we understood better how to approach them.
Yeah, I can understand that. It's really a sense of achievement with your consulting service, and then they achieve their goals, right?
Yeah. So I always try and focus on the end result, which is usually to sell at a higher price, to buy at a lower price, to complete projects more efficiently, to get across your point of view effectively if you're working in government or, for example, in the EU, that type of thing. So it's the end result that for me is the best feedback. I mean, it's fine if someone says we had a great time, we enjoyed it, but if someone comes back and said you made a real difference to our results, then for me, that's the best feedback.
That's right. It's very pragmatic and also very practical. Yes. And I'm just thinking that what kind of suggestions can you give us when it comes to dealing with British professionals and vice versa?
I think with the British, one of the key challenges that other cultures have with the British is that they don't always understand what we mean.
Yeah.
So we mean what we say, but we don't say what we mean. So let me give you an example. I mean, you're living in Germany, and generally, if Germans disagree with you, they simply say that they disagree. But Brits are more likely to say something like, that's an interesting idea. Now, some cultures are good at reading between the lines. I think the Chinese are quite good at reading between the lines. The Japanese are extremely good at it, and they're even more extreme in their indirectness than the British are. But I think that's one of the biggest problems. And of course, what does that lead to? First of all, it leads to misunderstanding, but then it can lead to a lack of trust, because they feel that you said it was interesting. Now we've discovered that it isn't. So we can't really believe you. And so there are problems with trust with the British. I think the other big problem that people sometimes have with the Brits is that we give the appearance of not being very serious often. It doesn't always happen, but we tend to mix business with humor and lightness, joking around, pretending that we're really not very organized. In fact, most Brits are actually very organized, but we like to give the impression that we're rather a sort of amateurish mess. And why do we do that? Well, I think it goes back to the English school system, particularly public schools, which in the UK means a very expensive private school. You know, even there you've got the confusion with British English compared to American. I mean, Americans, if you talk about a public school, they say, oh, well, you mean one that was, you don't pay to go to it. No, in England, it's just the opposite. In the UK, it's just the opposite. And imagine that you're in a public school, particularly if it's a boarding school where you stay there all the time, you sleep there in a dormitory, etc. Then if you are perceived as the pupil who does a lot of work all the time, always pleases the teacher, gets full marks and spends a lot of time studying, then you tend to get bullied. And so many Brits pretend that they're not working hard, whereas in fact they're doing it in secret. But that can give the wrong impression to other cultures who think, well, this person's just not serious at all.
It is rather a privilege and a pleasure to have you. Thank you very much indeed, Michael.